Two fake cops just cornered my wife and destroyed our truck for parking illegally on our own driveway. Picture this. I'm driving home from work when I see my wife Rebecca trapped between two men in police uniforms at our mailbox. My heart stops. These aren't real cops, I can tell from 50 yards away, but they've got badges, they've got attitude, and they've got my wife looking scared. The moment Rebecca pulls out her phone to film them, all hell breaks loose. The first fake cop grabs a crowbar from their wannabe patrol car and starts going medieval on my truck's headlights. Smash! Glass everywhere, shards glittering like diamonds on my concrete driveway. His partner boots my side mirror clean off with a sickening metallic crack that makes every neighbor's curtain twitch. But they're not done. Out comes a box cutter. Hiss, hiss. Two tires deflating like punctured balloons. $1,200. Gone. Because I parked on my own property. What would you do? Drop your location. I need to know where my warriors are watching from. Let me back up and tell you how we got to this insanity. My name's Marcus Isabella. I'm 34, own a diesel repair shop, and my hands are permanently stained with grease that no amount of Dawn dish soap will ever completely remove, trust me. I've tried everything short of sandpaper. My wife Rebecca teaches 3rd grade at Desert View Elementary. She's the kind of teacher who spends her own paycheck on classroom supplies because she actually gives a damn about those kids learning to read. We saved for 8 brutal years to buy our dream house in Willowbrook Estates, this planned community outside Phoenix where every house looks like it was designed by the same architect having the same boring dream. 180 cookie-cutter homes, $285 monthly HOA dues, and enough rules to make a prison warden weep with joy. But it had everything we wanted. A big driveway for my work truck, a 2-car garage I could convert to a workshop, and neighbors who'd hopefully mind their own business. That fantasy lasted exactly 14 days. Enter Constance Wickham, our HOA president and part-time destroyer of dreams. Picture your worst nightmare of a middle-aged white woman with too much time, too much money, and way too little purpose in life. 58 years old, retired insurance adjuster who probably spent her career denying claims for fun. She drives a white Mercedes SUV that gleams like a dental commercial and costs more than most people make in a year. The woman has this habit of wearing oversized sunglasses even indoors, like she's some kind of D-list celebrity hiding from paparazzi in suburban Arizona, which, honestly, would be hilarious if she wasn't about to make our lives a living hell. The first notice arrived on a Tuesday, printed on official HOA letterhead that probably cost more per sheet than my lunch. A crisp $150 fine for commercial vehicle violation. My work truck, clearly marked with Chen's Diesel Repair in modest lettering, was apparently destroying the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. Here's the kicker. The HOA covenant explicitly allows light commercial vehicles under 8,000 pounds. My truck weighs 6,800 pounds. I had the specs, the documentation, even a scale ticket from the DMV, completely, utterly, legally compliant. I appealed with a folder thick enough to choke a horse. Photos, measurements, highlighted covenant sections, the works. The response came back faster than a boomerang. Aesthetic concerns override technical compliance. Translation: we don't like how your truck looks, so screw your legal rights. That's when Princess Constance decided to grace us with a royal visit. The click, click, click of her designer heels on our concrete driveway sounded like a countdown timer to doom. The smell hit me first, some expensive perfume that probably cost more per ounce than premium gasoline, mixed with the dry desert heat to create this overwhelming cloud of artificial flowers and entitlement that seemed to follow her around like a toxic aura. Perhaps you don't understand how civilized communities work, she announced, clipboard clutched like a weapon, snapping photos of our property like she was documenting war crimes. Her voice had that special kindergarten teacher talking to a slow child tone that makes your teeth itch. Rebecca tried the diplomatic approach because she's a better person than me. Mrs. Wickham, we could park the truck behind the house if that would help maintain the neighborhood's appearance. Constance's smile could have frozen antifreeze. Rules are rules, dear. Perhaps this neighborhood isn't the right fit for your situation. The way she said situation while looking pointedly at my calloused hands and Rebecca's modest Honda like we were some kind of infestation that needed professional removal. A week later, notice number 3, $500 for repeat violation. but buried in the legal-sounding gibberish was this gem. Municipal Security Services will begin active enforcement patrols. So I did what any suspicious mechanic would do, fired up Google and started digging. Municipal Security Services, unlicensed private company, incorporated 6 months ago, owned by Leonard Wickham, Constance's brother-in-law Leonard. 12 online reviews, all one-star disasters painting a picture of systematic harassment across 3 counties. The scam was beautiful in its simplicity: target working families, escalate quickly, profit from the chaos. That night, I spread my research across our kitchen table like a detective solving a murder case. Rebecca set down her stack of spelling tests and studied the evidence with the same intensity she used to spot which kid had actually done their homework. "So," she said quietly, "we're not dealing with parking violations." "Nope. We're dealing with organized fraud designed to force us out. Then we fight." God, I love that woman. 2 days later, our fake cops made their grand entrance. I'm in the garage organizing my socket set because apparently I'm the kind of guy who finds zen in perfectly arranged tools when I hear the rumble of a big engine outside. Through my workshop window, I see this white Crown Victoria rolling up our street like it owns the place. Light bar on top, tinted windows, the whole intimidation package. 2 men climb out wearing navy blue uniforms that probably came from the same costume shop where mall security guards buy their authority complexes. Official-looking badges catching the afternoon sun, utility belts loaded with gear they have no legal right to carry, and attitudes bigger than their fake jurisdiction. The taller one, I'd later learn his name was Officer Bradley Hutchins, had the kind of mustache that screamed peaked in high school. His partner, Dale Morrison, looked like he bench-pressed donuts for a living. Both had that swaggering walk of men who'd watched too many cop shows and not enough constitutional law videos. "Sir, we need you to move this vehicle immediately or face towing and citation," Hutchins announced, slapping an official-looking clipboard against my truck's hood like he was serving a warrant. I walked over slowly, wiping my hands on a shop rag that probably had more legal authority than these clowns. The smell of cooling engine oil mixed with their cheap cologne created this weird automotive barbershop scent that would have been funny if they weren't trying to steal my truck. "Can I see your credentials?" I asked, already pulling out my phone. Morrison stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel I'd spread around my driveway for better drainage. "We're Municipal Security Services, authorized by the HOA for enforcement activities." "That's interesting," I said, snapping photos of their badges, their license plate, their increasingly uncomfortable faces. "Which agency issued those badges?" "Sir, we're just doing our job," Hutchins replied, suddenly less confident. "Your neighbors complained about this eyesore." "Which neighbors?" "I'd like to speak with them directly." "That's confidential information," Morrison snapped. "Move the vehicle or we take action." Rebecca appeared in our doorway like a guardian angel in teacher clothes. "Honey, just park it in the street for now." It's not worth the trouble. Every fiber of my being wanted to agree with my wife, find the path of least resistance, avoid the confrontation. But something about these fake cops' smug certainty that they could push us around lit a fire in my chest that all the reasonable voices in my head couldn't extinguish. "No," I said, still photographing. "This is our property, and I know my rights." Here's something I learned from my dad, who worked construction for 30 years. When someone threatens you with official paperwork, always ask to see the real documentation. Real cops don't mind showing credentials. Fake ones get nervous and change the subject. That evening, after they'd left with threats and bluster but no actual enforcement, I made the call that changed everything. "Phoenix Police Non-Emergency Line, how can I help you?" "Hi, I need to verify the authority of Municipal Security Services. 2 of their officers just threatened to impound my vehicle from my own driveway." The dispatcher's pause told me everything I needed to know. "Sir, can you hold while I check our database?" 5 minutes later, "We have no record of Municipal Security Services having any law enforcement authority in Phoenix or Maricopa County. If someone impersonated a police officer, that's a felony under Arizona Revised Statute 13-2411. And that's when I realized I wasn't dealing with overzealous HOA enforcement. I was looking at organized crime. I spent the next 3 hours down the rabbit hole of online research. Municipal Security Services had a website that looked like it was designed by someone's nephew who'd taken a community college web design course. Their Crown Vic? I found it listed on a police auction site from 6 months ago. You could still see the ghost outlines of the original department numbers under their fresh white paint job if you knew where to look. But here's the mini twist that made my blood run cold. I found their Yelp page with 12 reviews, all painting the same picture of systematic harassment across 3 different HOA communities. One reviewer wrote, "They towed my car from my own driveway while I was loading groceries, charged $400 cash to get it back. No receipts, no paperwork, just legal theft." The pattern was crystal clear. Target working-class families who couldn't afford lawyers, escalate quickly to expensive solutions, pocket the cash, and move on to the next victim. We weren't their first rodeo, we were just their latest marks. The next afternoon, I found out just how brazen these criminals really were. I'm supposed to be at work, but I've taken the afternoon off and parked around the corner, waiting to see what they'd really do when they thought nobody was watching. That engine rumble announces their return, but this time they brought back up a tow truck with 24-hour recovery painted in fading letters on the side. I watched from my kitchen window as they hooked up my truck like professional car thieves. No paperwork, no legal authority, just systematic theft dressed up in official uniforms. Rebecca confronted them in our driveway, phone recording everything, her teacher voice cutting through their bluster like a laser through butter. "Gentlemen, you're committing theft," she said with the same calm authority she used to handle unruly 8-year-olds. "This vehicle is legally parked on private property." "Ma'am, step back for your safety," Hutchins replied, positioning himself between Rebecca and the truck. When I came around the corner and saw my wife facing down these frauds alone, something primal kicked in. Not anger cold, calculating fury, the kind that plans revenge instead of throwing punches. By the time I paid their $400 cash ransom to get my truck back from some sketchy lot across town, I'd made a decision that would change everything. These fake cops had just picked a fight with the wrong mechanic. Getting my truck back wasn't the end, it was just Constance announcing she was taking the gloves off. 3 days later, she decided to escalate with what she called an architectural compliance inspection. She showed up at our door with her fake cops plus a new player, some guy in a hard hat calling himself a building inspector who looked suspiciously like he'd ordered his credentials from the same sketchy website as the security badges. I was at the shop rebuilding a transmission when Rebecca called, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Honey, you need to get home. Now." The sound of multiple car doors slamming in our driveway had made her stomach drop like she was about to get audited by the IRS health department and her mother-in-law simultaneously. But my wife? She channeled that anxiety into pure teacher steel. "Mrs. Isabella, we need to inspect your garage to verify compliance with residential zoning requirements," Constance announced, waving around what looked like an official warrant but was actually just a highlighted copy of our HOA covenant printed on fancy letterhead. Here's something I learned from handling difficult customers at the shop. When someone shows you paperwork and won't let you read it carefully, it's usually because they're hoping you won't notice it's garbage. Real warrants don't have HOA logos and highlighter marks. Rebecca stood in our doorway like a bouncer at an exclusive club, arms crossed, phone recording everything. The afternoon heat was already making everyone sweat, but she looked cool as a cucumber in a freezer. "I'll need to see a real warrant with a judge's signature," she said in that calm teacher voice that could make a tornado apologize for being disruptive. The fake inspector, who I swear looked exactly like Leonard Wickham from the Municipal Security Services website, puffed up like an angry rooster. "Ma'am, we have authority to enter if you refuse compliance with municipal regulations." "Then show me which municipality issued your authority," Rebecca shot back, and I could practically hear her brain filing away every word for later use. Because last I checked, HOA covenants don't override the Fourth Amendment. By the time I got home, they were measuring my driveway with the kind of intensity usually reserved for crime scene investigations. The metallic snap of their measuring tape cutting through the desert air sounded like a countdown timer, and Constance directed the operation like a general planning an invasion of a particularly stubborn country. "Gentlemen," I said, walking up with my own camera rolling, "can I see your credentials and the warrant authorizing this inspection?" Hutchins started his usual bluster about HOA authority, but I'd done my homework since our last dance. "Funny thing about warrants," I interrupted. "Real ones have case numbers, judge signatures, and they specify exactly what's being searched and why." The look that passed between Constance and her fake inspector was like watching 2 poker players realize they'd been caught marking cards. Their confidence cracked just enough for me to see the fraud underneath, and honestly, it was beautiful. But here's the mini twist that made my blood pressure spike. While they were playing pretend inspector in my driveway, Constance had been busy filing complaints with the actual county about my illegal business operations. She'd reported me for zoning violations, environmental hazards, and basically everything short of running a meth lab in my garage. I found out when a real county inspector showed up the next morning. Dave Holbrook, 20-year veteran who looked like he'd seen every scam in the book and had the patience of a saint dealing with particularly slow sinners. Mr. Isabella, I'm here about complaints regarding commercial vehicle storage and automotive repair in a residential zone, he said, checking his tablet with the weary efficiency of a man who'd rather be inspecting actual problems. I showed him around my perfectly legal set-up basic tools, proper ventilation, no hazardous material storage beyond what every homeowner keeps for lawn care. The smell of motor oil and clean concrete filled my garage, mixed with Dave's coffee breath as he examined everything with professional thoroughness. Sir, everything here is completely compliant with county zoning for home-based automotive maintenance, he said after 15 minutes. Your business license is current, you're not doing major repairs or running a commercial operation. Whoever filed this complaint either doesn't understand the law or is wasting my time on purpose. And that's when Constance made her biggest mistake. She showed up during the real inspector's visit, marching across my driveway like she owned 3 counties and half of Mexico. Officer Holbrook, she called out. I'm the HOA president who filed the complaint. This man is clearly violating residential zoning with his illegal garage business. Dave looked at her the way mechanics look at customers who insist their car is broken when it just needs gas. Ma'am, I'm Inspector Holbrook, not officer, and everything here is perfectly legal. This is the 3rd false complaint you've filed this month. Watching Constance's face turn the color of a sunburned lobster while a real government official debunked her lies in front of witnesses was almost worth the harassment. Almost. But surely the neighborhood deterioration, she started. Ma'am, Dave interrupted, filing false government reports is a misdemeanor in Arizona. I'd suggest you familiarize yourself with actual zoning laws before making more complaints. After Dave left and Constance peeled out in her Mercedes like a teenager who'd just been grounded, I had a moment of clarity standing in my driveway. These people had just handed me evidence of criminal behavior on a silver platter. Time to start building a case that would make their fake badges look like toy store prizes. The gloves came completely off the following Tuesday when these fake cops decided to corner my wife at our mailbox like she owed them money from a poker game gone wrong. I'm driving home from a job across town, radio playing some classic rock that's probably older than the transmission I just rebuilt, when I see something that makes my blood turn to ice water. 2 men in those ridiculous Navy uniforms have positioned themselves on either side of Rebecca at the end of our driveway, and she's got her phone out filming everything like a war correspondent in suburbia. Mrs. Isabella, your husband's harassment of Mrs. Wickham needs to stop, Morrison was saying as I pulled up, his voice carrying that fake authority tone that makes my teeth itch worse than fingernails on a chalkboard. Rebecca, bless her heart, didn't back down an inch. Standing there in her teacher clothes with the afternoon heat making everyone else wilt, she looked about as intimidated as a librarian shushing rowdy teenagers. He's only asked to see your credentials, which is his legal right as an American citizen. Hutchins stepped closer, close enough that his cheap cologne mixed with the desert heat created this nauseating cloud of artificial musk and desperation. Sometimes rights aren't worth the trouble they cause, ma'am. That's when I knew these clowns had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Both men had positioned themselves to block Rebecca's path to our house. A classic intimidation tactic that would have worked great if they were dealing with someone who didn't have a teacher's supernatural ability to handle aggressive behavior from overgrown children. I parked across the street and started recording with my phone before I even got out of the truck. Here's something I learned from years of dealing with insurance companies after accidents. If it's not on video, it didn't happen, and if it is on video, they can't lie about it later. Gentlemen, I called out, walking toward them with the kind of calm that comes from being absolutely done with someone's nonsense. Is there a problem here? That's when they made the mistake that would destroy their entire operation. Instead of de-escalating like real professionals, these fake cops completely lost their composure. Hutchins marched over to my truck and pulled out a crowbar from their wannabe patrol car like he was about to demolish a condemned building or his own career prospects. Smash! the first headlight exploded in a shower of glass and plastic that caught the afternoon sun like confetti at the world's worst party. The sound echoed off every house in the neighborhood with the sharp crack of expensive things breaking, and I could see curtains twitching as our scared rabbit neighbors peeked out to watch the show. "Move this piece of junk or lose more pieces," Morrison shouted, his partner already lining up the second headlight for destruction like a baseball player aiming for the fences. Smash! There went headlight number 2, followed by the metallic crack of my side mirror getting kicked clean off my truck. It skittered across the asphalt like a hockey puck, leaving a trail of broken glass that sparkled in the desert heat like the world's most expensive breadcrumbs. But they weren't done with their tantrum. Morrison pulled out a box cutter and went after my tires like he was performing surgery on a patient he really didn't like. Hiss, hiss. 2 perfectly good tires deflating with the sound of my patience finally running out completely, mixed with the smell of hot rubber that would linger in our driveway for days. Here's something my dad taught me about dealing with bullies. Never let them see you lose control, because that's exactly what they want. So instead of charging these idiots like every instinct in my body was screaming at me to do, I kept filming and calmly stated for the record, "This is destruction of private property by individuals impersonating police officers." Rebecca had moved to safety, but kept her own camera rolling, and I could see neighbors starting to emerge from their houses like prairie dogs checking for predators after hearing gunshots. I called 911 before the fake cops had even finished destroying my truck. I need police for property destruction and intimidation by individuals impersonating officers. 8 minutes later, and let me tell you, 8 minutes feels like 8 hours when you're watching criminals destroy your stuff while neighbors film it like it's a reality TV show. 2 actual Phoenix PD units rolled up with the kind of professional efficiency that makes you remember why you pay taxes. Officer Maria Santos and Officer James Kim stepped out of their patrol car, and the difference between real cops and these costume-wearing fraudsters was like comparing a Swiss watch to a plastic toy from a Happy Meal. "Sir, these men have no police powers whatsoever," Santos told me after a quick glance at Hutchins and Morrison's fake badges. "In Arizona, private security guards must display their company name and license number, and they cannot detain, arrest, or destroy property under any circumstances." Kim was already photographing my destroyed truck, making notes about the estimated damage with the methodical precision of someone who'd seen this kind of stupidity before. "Looks like about $1,200 in repairs, plus whatever they charged you for the illegal towing last week." But here's the mini twist that made this whole nightmare suddenly worth every broken headlight. When the real cops ran background checks on our fake officers, they hit the criminal jackpot like slot machine players in Vegas. Hutchins had an outstanding warrant for bounced checks in Tucson. Morrison's driver's license had been suspended for multiple traffic violations, and neither one had the security guard license required by Arizona law to wear those uniforms, carry those badges, or intimidate anyone more threatening than a mall mannequin. Mrs. Patterson from next door came over with her Ring doorbell footage. "Honey, I got it all on camera, including the audio of them threatening you and your wife." The Johnsons from across the street had recorded everything from their window. Even Mr. Kowalski, the retired Air Force guy from the corner house, showed up with his own documentation and the bearing of someone who dealt with actual threats to national security. "Son," he said, looking at the glass scattered across my driveway like crystal confetti, "I know exactly what these clowns are trying to pull. It's time to take them down properly." Standing there surrounded by actual police officers, real evidence, and neighbors who'd finally decided to stop hiding behind their curtains, I realized something important. These fake cops had just picked a fight with the entire neighborhood, and we were about to show them what real community justice looked like. That night, while Rebecca applied ice to the stress headache these idiots had given her, I decided it was time to follow the money trail like a bloodhound with the accounting degree. You see, there's something most people don't know about HOA financial records. They're public documents in Arizona. For $25 and a simple records request, any homeowner can see exactly where their dues are going. It's like getting X-ray vision into your neighborhood's financial underwear, and let me tell you, sometimes what you find makes you wish you'd stayed blind. I filed the request online at midnight, fueled by leftover pizza that tasted like cardboard and the kind of righteous anger that turns auto mechanics into forensic accountants. The smell of cold cheese and motor oil from my hands created this weird combination that would forever remind me of the night I became a detective. 3 business days later, I had a manila envelope full of documents that would make these fraudsters wish they'd picked honest careers like used car sales or telemarketing. The Municipal Security Services contract was buried on page 47 of the HOA's quarterly financial report, hidden like a dirty secret in your grandmother's attic. $2,400 monthly for enhanced security patrol services with a contract clause that made my blood pressure spike higher than a NASCAR engine. Security services authorized to use necessary measures to maintain community standards. But here's where it got really interesting, and by interesting, I mean holy crap, call the FBI level criminal. Cross-referencing the payments with the contract dates under my bright LED work lights, I discovered that Constance Wickham was receiving a 15% commission on every fine collected by Municipal Security Services. Every bogus parking ticket, every fake violation notice, every intimidation tactic that forced families to pay up, she was getting a cut like some suburban mob boss collecting protection money from neighborhood lemonade stands. The documents spread across my garage workbench told a story that would make a crime novelist jealous. Municipal Security Services, incorporated exactly 6 months ago by Leonard Wickham, Constance's brother-in-law. No business license, no insurance, no bonding, just a couple of criminals with fake badges and delusions of authority. But wait, it gets so much worse it makes bad look good. I spent the next evening cross-referencing HOA violation records with county property assessor data. My garage lit up like mission control while neighbors probably wondered if I'd started building rockets. What I found was a conspiracy so organized it belonged in a textbook on white-collar crime. Constance and Leonard weren't just collecting fines, they were systematically targeting specific properties for violations until the owners either paid escalating penalties or gave up and sold their houses below market value, like some twisted real estate roulette where the house always wins. Every single property that received multiple violations had been purchased within 6 months by a shell company called Willowbrook Holdings, LLC. The owner of Willowbrook Holdings? Leonard Wickham, naturally, because apparently crime doesn't require creativity, just audacity. The scheme was beautiful in its evil simplicity. Harass working-class families with fake violations and intimidation tactics until they break financially or emotionally, force them to sell cheap, buy their houses through the shell company, then flip them to buyers who fit Constance's vision of suburban paradise. It was gentrification with badges and clipboards. This wasn't just HOA harassment. This was a RICO conspiracy involving mail fraud, real estate fraud, impersonating police officers, and systematic intimidation that had probably displaced dozens of families across multiple neighborhoods. My family wasn't being targeted because of parking violations or neighborhood aesthetics. We were being targeted because Leonard and Constance had looked at our house, decided they wanted it, and figured a couple of working-class people would roll over like trained dogs when confronted with official-looking authority. They'd picked the wrong mechanic. The next morning, I called Rebecca into the garage to show her what I'd discovered. She stood there in her robe and slippers, coffee mug steaming in the cool morning air, studying the evidence spread across my workbench like a general planning the invasion of Normandy. "So they're not just bullies," she said quietly, her teacher brain processing the implications. "They're organized criminals running a real estate scam." "Yep, and we've got enough evidence to take down their entire operation and probably send them to federal prison." Rebecca set down her coffee with the careful precision of someone making a life-changing decision and looked at me with that expression I'd learned to recognize over 8 years of marriage, the one that meant she was about to surprise everyone, including herself. "Then let's destroy them completely." God, I love that woman. The next morning, my garage transformed from an auto repair shop into something that looked like a cross between a war room and a very angry accountant's office. Rebecca made coffee strong enough to wake the dead while I cleared my workbench and spread out every piece of evidence we'd collected. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with motor oil and the faint scent of printer ink as we started building our case like generals planning D-Day, except instead of invading France, we were about to destroy some suburban criminals who'd picked the wrong neighborhood to terrorize. Our first call was to Mrs. Patterson's nephew David, who turned out to be a lawyer specializing in HOA disputes with the kind of enthusiasm most people reserve for Christmas morning or winning lottery tickets. He drove over that afternoon in a sensible Honda Civic, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than my truck's transmission. "Uncle Marcus," he said, because apparently saving neighborhoods from criminal conspiracies makes you family, "this is a RICO prosecutor's dream case. You've got documented pattern of illegal activity, financial benefit to the conspirators, and interstate commerce connections since they operated across county lines. David explained that we needed 3 elements for federal RICO charges: a pattern of criminal activity over time, financial enterprise benefiting from the crimes, and evidence of coordination between the conspirators. We had all 3 in duplicate with footnotes and color-coded charts. The Johnsons connected us with Jennifer Walsh, an investigative reporter from Channel 12 who took one look at our evidence and practically started salivating like a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "This story has everything," she said, setting up her laptop on my workbench like she was moving in permanently. Fake cops, real estate fraud, working families getting screwed by corrupt authority figures. My editor's going to wet himself with excitement. Jennifer's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Let Constance hang herself on live television during the next monthly HOA meeting. Hidden cameras, multiple angles, and a dramatic reveal that would make courtroom TV shows look like amateur theater. Mr. Kowalski brought military precision to our operation, showing up with recording equipment that probably cost more than most people's cars, and the kind of tactical planning that comes from 20 years of keeping America safe from people significantly more dangerous than suburban HOA criminals. "Son," he said, examining our evidence with the thoroughness of someone who'd once hunted actual enemies of the state, "these amateurs have made enough mistakes to fill a federal prosecutor's Christmas stocking. We just need to let them keep talking long enough to incriminate themselves completely." Our secret weapon turned out to be Marina Rodriguez, a CPA who lived 3 streets over and had the kind of forensic accounting skills that make white-collar criminals wake up in cold sweats. She volunteered to analyze the HOA books with the enthusiasm of a treasure hunter who'd just found a map marked X marks the fraud. "These idiots kept records of everything," Marina said, her laptop screen reflecting off her glasses as she worked through the financial documents like a mathematical surgeon. "Leonard's been paying himself consulting fees, Constance has been double billing for services, and they've been skimming money from the reserve fund, like kids stealing cookies from an unlocked jar." Marina's analysis revealed that over 6 months they'd stolen $43,000 in HOA fees, with only $28,000 actually going to their fake security company. The missing $15,000 had been funneled into Constance's personal account through a series of fake invoices that would make a mobster blush with embarrassment. The technical preparation felt like building a space shuttle in my garage. Marcus installed security cameras around the property, perfectly legal in Arizona since it was our own land. Mr. Kowalski provided military-grade recording equipment that could probably pick up conversations from space. Mrs. Patterson coordinated her Ring doorbell network to create neighborhood surveillance coverage that would make the NSA jealous. Here's something I learned during this process. Arizona allows single-party consent for recording conversations, which means as long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, everything's legal and admissible in court. We were about to become a one-party consent neighborhood full of very well-documented criminals. Our strategy was beautifully simple. Let Constance think she was winning. I stopped documenting harassment publicly, neighbors acted defeated, some even put up for sale signs to make it look like the intimidation campaign was working. We were setting the perfect trap for someone whose ego was bigger than her common sense. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks away, giving us time to coordinate with the Attorney General's office, prepare hidden cameras, and let Constance plan whatever victory presentation would ultimately destroy her completely. Rebecca organized our evidence into a timeline that spanned the entire garage wall, color-coded by type of crime and level of stupidity. Standing back to admire our work, it looked like something you'd see in a cop show right before they arrest the bad guys. Except this was real life, and the bad guys were about to find out that regular people with documentation and determination can be more dangerous than any fake badge. "You know what the best part is?" Rebecca said, sipping her coffee while studying our criminal conspiracy flowchart. "What's that?" "They have no idea we know everything. They're going to walk into that meeting thinking they're presenting a victory, and instead they're going to hand us their heads on a silver platter. 3 weeks to showtime. 3 weeks to watch them dig their own graves deeper." I couldn't wait. Constance must have developed some kind of criminal spider sense because 2 weeks before the HOA meeting, she realized something was wrong with our sudden defeat and decided to go nuclear. It started with her fake cops ramping up harassment to levels that would make airport security jealous. 4 a.m. wellness checks, where they'd shine flashlights through our bedroom windows like discount burglars checking if anyone was home. The tap-tap-tapping of their flashlights on glass at dawn became our new alarm clock, accompanied by Rebecca's creative vocabulary that would make a sailor apply for sensitivity training. They left official-looking citations for violations so ridiculous they belonged in a comedy sketch. Noise ordinance violation. Excessive hammer usage at 7 p.m. Environmental hazard, oil stains on private driveway. Architectural violation, mailbox position 2.3 inches beyond acceptable community standards. I kept every single citation, photographed everything, and secretly thanked them for providing more evidence of systematic harassment than a federal prosecutor could use in 3 separate cases. But Constance's masterstroke of stupidity came when she filed a false report with Child Protective Services, claiming we were operating an illegal auto shop that endangered neighborhood children with toxic chemicals. Never mind that we don't have children, and my toxic chemicals consisted of basic motor oil and the same car wash soap everyone else used. The CPS caseworker, Diane Foster, showed up looking like someone who'd seen every scam in the book and had exactly 0 patience for people who wasted her time on fictional emergencies. "Mr. and Mrs. Isabella," she said after a 5-minute inspection of our garage, "this is clearly retaliation harassment. Your setup is cleaner than most people's kitchens, and whoever filed this report has committed a felony under Arizona law. Here's something most people don't know. Filing false CPS reports is considered child abuse in Arizona because it wastes resources that could be used protecting kids who actually need help." Constance had just added another felony to her growing collection of criminal charges, like she was collecting Pokemon cards, except these would get her sent to federal prison. Meanwhile, our alliance was quietly documenting everything while pretending to crumble under the pressure. Mrs. Patterson started acting defeated, talking loudly about maybe selling her house and moving closer to her sister in Florida. The Johnsons put up a for sale sign and let their neighbors think the harassment had finally broken them. Mr. Kowalski played his role perfectly, grumbling about these young troublemakers bringing problems to the neighborhood while secretly coordinating with the Attorney General's office to time their investigation for maximum impact. The mini twist that almost broke our cover came when Leonard Wickham approached me directly outside the grocery store like some kind of suburban mobster making an offer I couldn't refuse. "Marcus," he said, sliding up to my truck while I loaded groceries. "Nothing personal, but your family doesn't belong in this neighborhood. I'm prepared to offer you $10,000 cash to drop any complaints and move somewhere more suitable." I kept my phone recording in my shirt pocket while he basically confessed to organized real estate fraud in the middle of a Safeway parking lot. The man had all the criminal intelligence of a brick that had been dropped on its head repeatedly. "What makes you think I have complaints to drop?" I asked, playing dumb while he dug his own grave deeper than a subway tunnel. "Let's just say certain enforcement activities might escalate if cooperation isn't forthcoming," Leonard replied, apparently thinking he sounded threatening instead of like a cartoon villain auditioning for community theater. He went on to explain how their security services were expanding statewide, how they'd perfected their system in 3 other communities, and how working-class families like ours always eventually saw reason and accepted their generous buyout offers. By the time he finished talking, I had enough recorded confession to send him to federal prison for the next decade, plus evidence of similar schemes in other neighborhoods that would make the FBI's white-collar crime unit dance with joy. But Constance wasn't done showcasing her criminal creativity. She created fake social media accounts to post complaints about our illegal business operations, claiming we were threatening community safety with automotive chemicals and running a chop shop that attracted criminal elements. The posts were so obviously fake that Mrs. Patterson's tech-savvy granddaughter traced them back to Constance's home IP address in about 15 minutes. Apparently, criminal masterminds don't understand that digital harassment leaves electronic fingerprints bigger than a Sasquatch walking through fresh concrete. The pressure campaign was actually working, just not the way they intended. Instead of breaking us down, every new harassment tactic provided more evidence for federal charges. Every fake citation added to their systematic harassment case. Every false report to government agencies added felony charges to their growing legal problems. Rebecca was forced to take stress leave from teaching, but she used the time to coordinate with Jennifer Walsh on hidden camera placement for the upcoming HOA meeting. My business was suffering from constant disruption, but the positive media attention from neighbors sharing our story was bringing in new customers who wanted to support the guy fighting back against fake authority. Some of our alliance members were wavering under the constant pressure, wondering if maybe we should just take Leonard's money and run. But every time someone suggested giving up, we'd remember what would happen to the next family these criminals targeted. 3 days before the HOA meeting, Constance made her final mistake. She scheduled an emergency architectural review with county code enforcement, claiming my garage workshop violated residential zoning laws. When the real inspector showed up and confirmed everything was perfectly legal for the third time, his parting comment was beautiful. "Ma'am, if you file one more false complaint, I'm recommending criminal charges for abuse of government resources." Standing in my driveway, watching Constance speed away in her Mercedes while a county official threatened her with prosecution, I realized we'd already won. The HOA meeting was just going to be our victory lap. 1 week before the HOA meeting, Constance and her criminal enterprise made their final desperate play, and it was so spectacularly stupid it belonged in a textbook on how not to commit organized crime. It started at 6 in the morning when I heard the rumble of multiple vehicles outside our house. Peering through the blinds with my coffee still brewing, I saw what looked like a small army, the fake cops in their Crown Vic, a massive tow truck that could haul an 18-wheeler, and 3 additional men who looked like they'd been recruited from whatever bar serves breakfast to people whose idea of career advancement involves facial tattoos. Rebecca was getting ready for another stress-induced doctor's appointment. Her blood pressure had been spiking from months of harassment, and our family physician had started documenting the medical impact of systematic intimidation for potential civil damages. "Honey," she called from the bathroom, "are those idiots back already?" "Yeah, but this time they brought friends and a tow truck big enough to steal a city bus." The plan was obviously to take my truck while I was supposedly at work, but I'd been expecting this escalation and had taken another personal day to document whatever criminally stupid thing they'd do next. Hutchins approached our front door with the swagger of someone who thought he was serving a warrant instead of about to commit grand theft auto on camera. "Mrs. Isabella," he announced when Rebecca answered the door, "your husband's vehicle is being impounded for creating an imminent safety hazard to community residents." Rebecca, bless her heart, stepped onto our porch with her phone recording and the kind of calm authority that comes from knowing you're dealing with criminal fraudsters who are about to destroy themselves completely. "Gentlemen, you're committing theft of private property," she said in her teacher voice, the one that could make a tornado apologize for being disruptive. "This vehicle is legally parked on private property with proper registration and insurance." "Ma'am, we have authority from the HOA and Municipal Security Services," Morrison replied, apparently forgetting that we'd already established their complete lack of any legal authority several felonies ago. That's when I decided to make my entrance, walking around the corner from where I'd been recording everything from multiple angles like a one-man documentary crew. "Morning, gentlemen," I called out, my voice carrying across the neighborhood with the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're about to watch criminals destroy their own lives in high definition. "Beautiful day to commit federal crimes on camera, isn't it?" The look that passed between the fake cops was like watching poker players realize they'd been caught marking cards, except these players were too stupid to fold even when the evidence was literally recording their every move. Instead of backing down like any rational criminals would do, they doubled down on stupidity. Hutchins signaled the tow truck operator, who started hooking up my truck like this was a perfectly legal repossession instead of grand theft auto being live-streamed to the neighborhood. That's when our plan kicked into high gear. Mrs. Patterson's Ring doorbell was recording everything. The Johnsons were filming from their window. Mr. Kowalski had positioned himself across the street with military-grade equipment that could probably read license plates from space. Marina Rodriguez was documenting everything from her house for the financial crime aspects of the case. I'd already called 911 before they'd even finished hooking up my truck. "This is Marcus Isabella at 1247 Desert View Drive. Multiple individuals are stealing my vehicle from my driveway while impersonating police officers." The 911 dispatcher's response was music to my ears. "Sir, we have 4 units en route." "Are the suspects still on scene?" "Oh yes," I said, watching Hutchins direct the tow truck operation like a criminal mastermind who'd forgotten he was committing crimes in broad daylight in front of multiple witnesses. "They're definitely still here." Rebecca had positioned herself to keep filming while staying safe, her teacher instincts for dealing with dangerous situations keeping her out of harm's way while documenting everything for federal prosecutors. When Phoenix PD arrived 4 units this time, because apparently attempted grand theft auto gets more attention than property destruction, The difference between real law enforcement and these costume-wearing fraudsters was like comparing a symphony orchestra to kids banging pots and pans. Sergeant Rodriguez took one look at the situation and immediately placed Morrison under arrest for attempted vehicle theft. Hutchins tried to run, abandoning the tow truck operator who started cooperating faster than a defendant offered a plea deal. "They paid me $300 to tow this truck," the operator told police. "Said it was a legal repo, but they couldn't show me any paperwork. Just kept saying they had authority." The mini twist that made this whole fiasco perfect was when Sergeant Rodriguez ran background checks and discovered that Morrison's outstanding warrant in Tucson had been upgraded to a felony, and Leonard Wickham had a previous conviction for identity theft that made him ineligible to run any kind of security company. But the beautiful part was watching our neighborhood transform from scared witnesses hiding behind curtains to an angry community demanding justice. Mrs. Patterson marched over with printouts of her Ring doorbell footage. The Johnsons brought their own recordings. Even neighbors who'd stayed neutral started sharing stories of harassment they'd been too afraid to report. "Officer," Mrs. Patterson told Sergeant Rodriguez, "these people have been terrorizing our neighborhood for months. We've all been documenting everything, and we want to press charges." Standing there watching Morrison get handcuffed while Hutchins fled like a coward, and the tow truck operator explained how he'd been paid to commit crimes by people with fake badges, I realized something important. We weren't just fighting for our family anymore. We'd accidentally started a neighborhood revolution against organized crime, and the criminals had just handed us enough evidence to destroy their entire operation. The HOA meeting in 3 days was going to be epic. The night of the HOA meeting, Willowbrook Community Center looked like the setup for either a town hall or a public execution, and honestly, I was hoping for a little of both. 85 residents packed into a room designed for maybe 50, creating the kind of tension you could cut with a butter knife and serve on crackers. The air conditioning was fighting a losing battle against nervous sweat and righteous anger, making the whole place smell like a gym after a championship game where nobody was quite sure who was winning yet. Jennifer Walsh had positioned Channel 12's cameras discreetly around the room, disguised as residents with smartphones, while Attorney General Investigator Sarah Mitchell sat in the back row pretending to be just another concerned homeowner instead of someone who could send people to federal prison. Rebecca and I arrived fashionably late, walking in together like we were attending a wedding instead of about to watch criminals destroy themselves on live television. She carried a folder thick enough to choke a horse, while I had my laptop loaded with enough evidence to make a federal prosecutor weep with joy. Constance made her entrance like a queen arriving at her coronation, flanked by Leonard and the one remaining fake cop, Hutchins, who apparently hadn't learned that hanging around criminals while wanted by police isn't the smartest career move. She wore a power suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and an expression of smug confidence that was about to age worse than milk left in the Arizona sun. "Ladies and gentlemen," Constance announced, clicking to her first PowerPoint slide with the flourish of someone who thought she was presenting the solution to world peace instead of organized crime. "Tonight we're discussing enhanced security, protecting property values through decisive action." Her presentation was a masterpiece of criminal arrogance. She proposed tripling the security budget to $7,200 monthly, hiring additional enforcement officers, and expanding their authority to include proactive intervention in community standards violations. Basically, she wanted permission to terrorize more families while getting paid even more money to do it. "Recent incidents prove that some residents require stronger encouragement to maintain community standards," she continued, clicking through slides that basically outlined a plan for suburban martial law administered by people with fake badges and real criminal records. I let her dig the hole deeper for 15 minutes before requesting my 5 minutes for resident concerns, as allowed by HOA bylaws that Constance apparently thought only applied to other people. "Mrs. Wickham, thank you for that fascinating presentation," I said, connecting my laptop to the community center's projection system with the calm efficiency of someone about to detonate a nuclear bomb made of evidence. "I'd like to share some research I've done on municipal security services." The first slide was our timeline 3 months of harassment documented with dates, photos, and videos that told the story of systematic intimidation better than any prosecutor could. The room went dead silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the sound of Constance's confidence deflating like a punctured tire. Slide 2, the property destruction footage. my truck's headlights exploding in high definition, the sound of breaking glass filling the community center's speakers, while 85 neighbors watched fake cops commit felony criminal damage in broad daylight. You could have heard a pin drop in that room, except pins don't usually cause gasps of outrage from elderly retirees who just realized they'd been paying criminals to terrorize their neighbors. But the real mic drop moment came when Marina Rodriguez stood up to present her forensic accounting findings. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 6 months, Municipal Security Services has collected $43,000 in HOA fees, while Constance Wickham has personally received $15,000 in kickbacks from every fine they've issued. The room erupted like a volcano filled with angry homeowners instead of lava. "How much did you steal from us?" someone shouted. "We want our money back," yelled another. That's when I played the recording of Leonard's attempted bribery in the Safeway parking lot, his voice crystal clear through the community center's sound system. "Your family doesn't belong in this neighborhood. I'm prepared to offer you $10,000 cash to drop any complaints and move somewhere more suitable." Leonard tried to bolt for the exit, but 85 angry neighbors make a pretty effective wall when they're motivated by discovering they've been systematically robbed by criminals with fake badges. Attorney General Investigator Sarah Mitchell chose that moment to stand up and show her credentials like a magician revealing the final trick. "Mrs. Wickham, Mr. Wickham, you're both under investigation for RICO violations, mail fraud, real estate fraud, and conspiracy to commit organized crime." Real Phoenix PD officers entered the room as if on cue, which they basically were, since we'd coordinated this timing down to the minute and arrested Hutchins on his outstanding warrant, while Leonard discovered that being surrounded by people you've been systematically robbing isn't the ideal position for making escape plans. Jennifer Walsh stepped forward with her microphone like a game show host announcing the grand prize winner. "This is Jennifer Walsh, Channel 12 Investigates, and we're broadcasting live from what appears to be the exposure of an organized criminal conspiracy targeting working families through fraudulent HOA enforcement." Other residents began sharing their harassment stories on camera, creating a chorus of testimony that would give federal prosecutors enough evidence to file charges until the next ice age. Mrs. Patterson grabbed the microphone. "They threatened to fine me for watering my garden." The Johnsons followed. "Our children were afraid to play outside." Mr. Kowalski's voice boomed over everyone. "I served this country for 20 years so families could live in peace, not be terrorized by criminals with fake badges." The HOA board voted unanimously to immediately terminate the security contract, remove Constance as president, and elect Marina Rodriguez as interim treasurer with authority to recover all stolen funds. Constance fled the meeting in tears, leaving behind her purse, her PowerPoint presentation, and a community center full of neighbors who just watched justice serve itself with a side of public humiliation. Standing there watching criminals get arrested while their victims celebrated on live television, I realized we'd done something bigger than just protecting our family. We'd shown an entire community that regular people with documentation and determination can beat organized crime. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in my garage reading the most satisfying court documents I'd ever seen, while the smell of fresh coffee mixed with motor oil created the perfect aroma of justice served with a side of automotive expertise. Leonard Wickham had accepted a federal plea deal, 4 years in prison plus $127,000 in restitution to affected homeowners. Apparently, when federal prosecutors have enough evidence to build a RICO case that could put you away for 15 years, 4 years starts looking like a Black Friday sale on prison sentences. Constance got 18 months plus a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. The judge's comments during sentencing were poetry. "Mrs. Wickham, you've betrayed the trust of families who simply wanted to live peacefully in their own homes. Your systematic harassment and financial fraud represent everything wrong with unchecked petty authority." Hutchins and Morrison each got 3 years for impersonating police officers, plus additional charges for property destruction and attempted vehicle theft. Turns out judges really don't like people who dress up like cops to terrorize working families. The asset seizure recovered $89,000 for affected homeowners across 3 neighborhoods. My family received $15,000 for property damage, business losses, and Rebecca's medical expenses from stress-related health issues. But honestly, watching these criminals get perp-walked on Channel 12 News was worth more than any monetary settlement. Rebecca returned to teaching with the kind of confidence that comes from discovering you can face down organized crime and win. Her blood pressure returned to normal, her stress headaches disappeared, and she started sleeping through the night again without jumping at every car door that slammed in our driveway. My business exploded with new customers who'd seen the story and wanted to support the mechanic who fought the fake cops. The irony was beautiful. Constance's harassment campaign, designed to destroy my livelihood, ended up making me the most successful diesel repair shop in 3 counties. The new HOA board transformed Willowbrook Estates from a surveillance state into an actual community. Mrs. Patterson became president with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for grandmothers planning surprise birthday parties. The Johnsons headed the social committee and organized monthly potluck dinners where neighbors actually talked to each other instead of hiding behind curtains. Mr. Kowalski established a genuine neighborhood watch program staffed by residents who understood the difference between community safety and criminal harassment. His first rule: real security protects people, fake security terrorizes them. Marina Rodriguez revolutionized HOA finances with transparent monthly reports and oversight that would make the Treasury Department proud. HOA dues dropped to $150 monthly, and every penny was accounted for with receipts, documentation, and quarterly presentations that prove democracy works when honest people pay attention. Jennifer Walsh's investigation won a regional Emmy for Outstanding Achievement in Investigative Reporting. Her documentary Fake Badges, Real Fraud aired nationally and inspired HOA reform legislation in 3 states. Rebecca and I got invited to Good Morning America, where sharing our story felt surreal but important. But the real victory was establishing the Community Justice Fund to help families fighting HOA corruption across Arizona. Mrs. Patterson donated her entire legal settlement, saying, "Honey, at my age, the best investment is watching criminals get what they deserve." The fund's first case involved an elderly couple in Tucson facing harassment from another fake security company. Armed with our playbook document everything, follow the money, build community alliances, they exposed a similar RICO conspiracy and recovered $200,000 in stolen HOA funds. Property values in Willowbrook Estates increased 15% after the fraud removal. Arizona Living magazine featured us in their Best Diverse Communities article, highlighting how neighbors supporting each other creates stronger neighborhoods than any fake security force could ever provide. On warm evenings now, Rebecca and I sit on our front porch watching kids play safely in streets that used to echo with the sound of fake patrol cars intimidating families. The air smells like desert flowers and barbecue smoke from neighborhood gatherings where diversity is celebrated instead of targeted. My truck, fully repaired, proudly displaying my business logo, sits in our driveway without fear of harassment or destruction. Sometimes I catch neighbors taking photos with it, like it's some kind of monument to regular people fighting back against corruption. Here's what I learned. Document everything with photos and videos, request HOA financial records, they're public in most states, build alliances with affected neighbors, and never let fake authority intimidate you into silence. Federal RICO laws exist to protect communities from organized crime, but someone has to demand justice. The sound of children's laughter mixing with neighbors calling friendly greetings across driveways, the scent of weekend barbecues where former strangers have become friends, the sight of Rebecca grading papers on our porch without stress-induced headaches. This is what victory looks like. If you've survived HOA harassment or dealt with fake authority figures, drop your story in the comments below. Share this video with anyone facing systematic bullying by petty tyrants with clipboards and fake badges. Subscribe to Karen's Stories for more tales where regular people beat corrupt systems. And next week I'll tell you how a librarian shut down a fake charity with one phone call and an excellent understanding of tax law. Until then, remember, criminals hate documentation, bullies fear community organizing, and justice tastes best when served with neighbors who've got your back.